Well, ladies and gentlemen, next up, to help you live a better life and stay alive longer, please welcome to the stage clinical psychologist Julie Horowitz.
Good evening. So some of you may recognize me from my last performance here in June, and I'm sure you would all agree that I have accomplished more than almost any other scientist / stand-up comedian in the history of our country. Wasn't expecting that reaction, but that's okay. I know it's just because you love my honesty and respect me. So as Mark mentioned, I am a clinical psychologist. So yes, I know what you all are thinking, and yes, I am analyzing you right now. And based on the 5 people who laughed at that joke, we now know who the other psychologists in the room are as well. Because you guys know, right? No matter where you go, you get the same responses when you tell people you're a psychologist. If it's not, are you analyzing me right now? It's, can you tell me what I'm thinking? And in those cases, I'm never quite sure if they have confused psychologist with psychic, or if they think that grad school actually somehow endows us with paranormal abilities, instead of doing what it actually does, which is just give us some letters to tack onto the ends of our names and give us a lifelong chip on our shoulders that we will never be considered real doctors. Then, of course, there's the reaction you get when you run into multiple people, whether it's a couple or a group of friends. Oh, do you think you can help my friend / wife / sister? She could really use it. So to avoid having to fake laugh at whichever of these very original responses I get, sometimes I choose instead to just go with the vague, I work in a hospital. And then I inevitably get the response, oh, are you a nurse? Now, I'm not saying anything at all negative about nurses. My mom is a nurse. I work closely with nurses. In my opinion, nursing is one of the biggest and most important, and at times grossest jobs out there. Do we have any nurses here tonight? All right, let's hear it for you guys. Yeah. But I mean, it is 2018, right? So you'd think we could start wrapping our heads around the idea that women could also hold other jobs in hospitals, like doctor, CEO, security guard. I mean, that can't be any harder than wrapping our heads around the idea that someone actually willingly decided to procreate with Jeff Sessions. I know, bad week to pick on him, it's true. So we all have to escape from our jobs once in a while, right? And in my case, I love to travel, which often provides a great opportunity to just let my guard down and escape from work for a while. So back when we had a president who was actually interested in building and strengthening ties with countries other than Russia and North Korea, I was traveling in Cuba with a friend, and we are taking a tour of a tobacco plantation in Viñales. We're strolling through the countryside, enjoying the beautiful surroundings, feeling only slightly disoriented being in a place where there are no golden arches to serve as our North Star. And we run into a couple of guys. They start talking to us, eventually ask us what we do. Not realizing that I may have just entered a fake laugh situation, I go ahead and tell them I'm a psychologist. The response? Oh, ¿puede ayudar a mi amigo? Es loco! Sometimes you just can't escape. So I am a clinical psychologist, but more specifically, I am a neuropsychologist. So I spend a lot of my time thinking about how people think and trying to figure out why patients may be having problems with their memory or language or some other aspect of their thinking. Now, of course, this also inevitably means that I spend a lot of time thinking about my own thinking and overanalyzing my own cognitive errors, which, let me tell you, makes for a fun Friday night. Because truthfully, the person that psychologists really spend most of their time analyzing is themselves. Truly, research is me-search. So my job can be pretty fascinating because there is so much we are still learning about the brain and about how it works. But it can also be pretty frustrating because there is so much misinformation out there. So for example, you guys might be surprised to learn that after a concussion, or what we also call a mild traumatic brain injury, or TBI, most people make a full and complete recovery within a matter of days or weeks, or in some cases a few months. So basically, you can expect that you will recover from a concussion more quickly than the nausea will go away that you've been experiencing since reading Brett Kavanaugh's yearbook page. And interestingly, a person's expectations for recovery following a concussion can affect how they actually recover. So people who expect to have a poor recovery tend to have a poorer recovery, and people who expect to get better quickly often do. So one of the best things that we can do for a patient after a concussion is to talk with them and provide reassurance. Kind of like the Catholic Church's approach to dealing with pedophilia. Except in this case, I'm talking about providing reassurance to the victims. And in this case, that reassurance is actually a good and appropriate thing to do. Now, a lot of the misinformation that's out there is actually spread and supported by the media, and shockingly by Hollywood. So, have any of you guys seen that movie, Concussion? Yes. Okay, pretty interesting movie. But that movie was to neuropsychologists what Grey's Anatomy has been to pretty much every branch of medicine in existence. So the quick and dirty, for those of you who don't know about it or haven't seen it, it is based on a true story. It stars Will Smith playing Dr. Bennett Omalu, a pathologist in Pittsburgh who studied and found abnormalities in the brains of dead NFL players. So as the story is told in the movie, after studying the brain of one single retired NFL player and finding abnormalities, he concluded that these abnormalities had to be the result of repetitive concussions, and decided he had found a new disease that he called chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE. Now, there are more flaws in this movie, and in some of the conclusions drawn by the field of CTE research than there are bizarre tweets made by Kanye, but I'm just going to focus on a few. So first of all, we have not done nearly enough research or the right types of research to conclude that these abnormalities Dr. Omalu found are the direct result of repeated concussions. Sure, it's plausible, definitely possible, but we really don't know for sure. Now, when I bring this up with my family and friends, because I mean, you guys all like to talk about brains and dementia over a nice dinner and a glass of wine, right? Yeah. They will sometimes bring up this recent study out of Boston, which showed that 101 out of 102 brains of NFL players showed, quote, evidence of CTE at autopsy. So taken alone, that sounds pretty convincing, right? But those 102 brains were all taken from football players whose families were so concerned about their cognitive and behavioral changes during life that they decided to have their brains autopsied. So concluding on the basis of those findings that over 99% of football players are developing CTE is kind of like a gynecologist concluding that on the basis of what she has found in 101 out of 102 of her patients, over 99% of humans have vaginas. And in case you were wondering, that 102nd patient was a man experiencing a sympathetic pregnancy. Or perhaps Donald Trump wanting to know if it's normal to have your nether regions described as a Yeti and that mushroom character from Mario Kart. And if you didn't get that reference, you're clearly not reading enough Stormy Daniels. Or actually, you're reading just enough Stormy Daniels, because once you get that image in your mind, there's no getting it out. So what we really need are some case control studies where we look at the brains of all NFL players, not just those who have developed dementia. And if Dr. Omalu was right that these abnormalities he found were the direct result of repeated concussions, we might expect, for example, that kickers will develop these abnormalities at a lower rate than other players. And in case you guys have been thinking that I'm just some huge football fan that doesn't want to believe that football could be responsible for causing a horrible brain disease, The knowledge that kickers are less susceptible to concussions than players in other positions pretty much exhausts my knowledge of the sport. And I thought about putting in a joke here about an organization that chooses to keep paying known animal abusers tens of millions of dollars and that tries to silence those players who try to use their celebrity to promote awareness of social injustice. But come on, this is the NFL. And in this country, some things are just too sensitive to joke about. Now, when it comes to doing these case studies, there are barriers, of course. Asking for a brain donation is a bit of a tricky business. When it comes to people's brains, they tend to be a little possessive, right? Or in some cases, there may just be some confusion about the process. So back when I was living in Boston, we were trying to recruit a hockey player for a brain donation study. Really nice guy. Definitely less possessive over his brain than some other folks. And I found out why when he expressed his concerns about the study. Well, I don't know. I mean, after I give this donation, how long till I can get back out on the ice? True story. So, another issue with this whole CTE scare is that football players have actually been shown to be physically and mentally healthier in comparison to their peers in the general population. So, furthermore, we don't have any clear and convincing evidence that the abnormalities we found in these football players are any different than those that other people develop. Although again, it's hard to know because most people don't end up getting their brains autopsied. But as of now, it is entirely possible that these football players who are developing dementia are actually developing the same types of neurodegenerative conditions we already know about, although again, actually in smaller numbers. Now trust me, I get it. Every scientist would love to be immortalized by discovering some new disease, right? I mean, there is nothing sexier than having your brain forever attached to some sort of nasty physical or mental ailment. Although I guess there's some limits to that because I'm guessing the reason we have disease names like chlamydia, gonorrhea, and herpes is that no one ever said, what I really want is anytime, anyone, anywhere develops painful urination and genital sores, they'll think of me. So the take-home message here is that yes, the findings coming out of the field of CTE are concerning, and yes, we should definitely keep doing more research. And yes, we absolutely need to be cautious and diligent when it comes to concussion prevention and management. But we do not have nearly enough evidence to conclude that hordes of professional football players are inevitably developing a disease called CTE. And certainly there's no reason for any of you to be concerned that if you have had multiple concussions, you are destined to develop a devastating neurodegenerative condition. And I know that some of you guys have this concern because I'm a psychologist, and yes, I know what you all are thinking. Thank you.